What is happening, y'all? Cowboy here, and welcome to my starter guide for Ghost of Tsushima. So big thanks to Sony for access to the game. Because of them, I'm able to get guides like this out a little bit sooner to y'all to help you on your journey. Now in this video, we're going to be covering a variety of topics, some combat tips, some early gear and where to get it, as well as the techniques I find most useful in general. We are still in the first region of the game, so there will be some minor spoilers, but they'll mainly just be names of missions, names of characters. We won't actually go into developments or story or anything along those lines. So, jumping on into it, the first thing I want to touch on are the early gear sets that you can access to give you an idea of what you might want to go for. And the first up is going to be the Traveler's Attire. Now this is more of a utility armor, but what's great about this is it clears an extra 30% of the fog that's on the map as you travel. And on the map, there are a lot of little nooks and crannies. A perfect example is where I'm at right now. With this armor, you know, that 30% will show me that there's a shrine over there and that there's a hot spring over there, whereas otherwise I would just kind of swing on through. And you can see there's still little bits of fog all over the place on the first zone. But it is nice from a utility standpoint to clear that fog to help you find things. And you're going to need to upgrade it 3 times to get up to the 30%, but I do think it's worthwhile from a utility standpoint. Now, as for more practical armors, there are 3 main armors you can get in the first region. We have the Ronin Attire, which is more of a combat-oriented stealth armor with reduction of enemy detection speed, enemies detecting you slower when you leave grass, and an increase to melee damage. You get this from doing Ryuzo's chain. We have the Samurai Clan armor, which this is a more combat tank oriented set, so it's going to reduce damage, increase health, and give you resolve on taking damage. This is from doing Masako's chain. And then we have Tadayori's armor, and this one is from doing one of the early on mythic quests. I'll talk about those a little bit later, but this is a bow-oriented set. So knocking and reload speed, concentration time, and extra concentration meter restored when you get off headshots. We, of course, have the default armor, which is just for looks. It doesn't come with any bonuses. Now, moving on from there, the next thing I want to talk about are charms. Now, charms they're passive bonuses that you can have in the game as you play. You can equip 2 major charms and then up to 4 minor charms. Now, you're not going to be able to equip 4 at start, but by completing fox dens, you'll stumble upon a fox den and there's a little fox. You follow it to a shrine, pray at the shrine. After you've done enough of those, you'll have an access to 4 minor charm slots. And minor charms are really just going to be whatever is for your playstyle. As you can see, I have melee damage, health, resolve gains, and then an increase to ghost weapon damage. So they're just little passive bonuses. But the major charms have significant impacts on gameplay, and there's 3 in particular I want to point out that I would consider to be the most useful. The first is the Charm of Inari. Now, what's phenomenal about this one is all the materials you're going to gather, you're going to be picking up more. So when you get bamboo, instead of getting 2 bamboo, you get 3 bamboo. Instead of getting 6 predator hides, you might get 8 predator hides. And all of these supplies and materials that you're going to pick up are going to be used to upgrade your ghost tools, your weapons, your armor, your bows. And because of that, getting this as early as possible is going to be very beneficial to you. So hopping over to the map, right at the start of the game, you're going to be right up here roughly. We'll just call this our base survivor camp. This is, you kind of stumble into here at the start. It's almost impossible to miss. If you go all the way down south to Azamo, right here in the middle of the region, you have the Arrow Peak Shrine. Now, the way these shrines work is they're parkour puzzles. So the idea is you show up, the shrine's been destroyed. You need to find a way to get up to the shrine between jumping from trees to cliffs to climbing to whatever the case is. I'm not going to show how to complete the shrine itself. It's, you know, pretty self-explanatory and kind of fun to figure out. But this is where you're going to be able to pick up that charm. Moving on from there, the next one I want to talk about is one that I used for quite a long time. And this is the Charm of Ohuninushi. Now, what is so phenomenal about this is there is no passive health regen in Ghost. You will get health back when you rest at a hot spring. You'll get health back when you're starting primary missions. You'll get health back if you spend resolve. But otherwise, if you're going into an encounter and your health's already low, there's a good chance you're going to die. So needless to say, this is an incredibly potent charm. You can also use this in combat. Essentially, if you were to throw a smoke bomb in combat, dip out, hide in a bush, this effect will start taking over because you're out of combat. So, you know, you can disengage temporarily to get a full heal off. Either way, very, very useful charm to get early on. And this is also one you can get very early. So once again, going from our early survivor camp here, you're going to head out to the east. And right over here, we have the Mending Rock Shrine. Now, this one is a little bit trickier to get to. The entrance to it is right here at the edge of the coast, and you're going to have to weave your way through the mountain and then do some tricky jumps and some climbing, and you can make your way on over to pick it on up. The next one I want to point out is what I would consider to be possibly the best charm in the game, at least up to this point I sure as hell think it is, and that is the charm of Mizuno Kami. Now this is going to increase the window on parries, perfect parries, and perfect dodges, and given they are such a core part of combat, you can obviously guess the value of how this is going to be so useful to us. So this one also relatively close at the start of the game. It's going to be out to the west at the Spring Falls Shrine. So this one also a little bit tricky. You won't be able to access the shrine at all from the backside, so come around from the east and you'll have to make your way up across a waterfall to get to it. Now there are quite a few different charms in the game. Those are just the ones that I thought were the most useful. This one gives you bonus damage at 50% health or less. Staggered enemies have a 30% chance to be knocked down. 40% chance to return an arrow and a headshot. Pretty OP if you're focused on playing as a mage. Health back on enemy kills. So there's all kinds of stuff, and you're going to be able to get these from completing missions or going to these shrines. But in general, those three that I touched on, Mizu, Oku, and then wherever it went, Inari, I would consider those to be the three big ones. As for minor charms, you're just going to get these from completing side missions or main missions. There's none in particular that stood out. They're all just, you know, kind of passive different bonuses. Sometimes it helps resolve, sometimes it helps damage, sometimes it helps healing, but nothing there that really is like, oh yeah, this is the one you absolutely need to have. So moving on from there, we are going to talk about techniques a little bit. Now in the base tree, we have deflection and evasion, and what you're going to go for first is really just going to depend on what you're more comfortable with. I will say if you're looking at the best value to point ratio, evasion is going to be a better tree to invest in because there are certain attacks that cannot be parried just regardless. The only thing you can do is dodge them. So with that in mind, building your way towards perfect dodge is a really good bet. That way you can execute perfect dodges on anything to get that counterattack that you're seeing in the clip right there. Very, very powerful ability. As for working your way through this tree, I'd suggest taking the same path I did. We have delayed strike right here, which will open up your light attack combo a little bit more. We have shoulder charge, which can be a little nice, you know, knock enemies on their ass. And then we have sprint strike, which is, you know, it's just, it makes the combat just flow better, being able to run up. I like using on archers a lot. Now for the two that I skipped here, we have dodging slash, which to be honest, you can already get off a dodging slash in combat without this ability. This ability is going to make it more fluid, but if you dodge an attack, you can usually get in a free hit anyway. So I didn't find this to be useful. And then over here, we have mounted strike, which allows you to do a jumping heavy attack from horseback. But the thing is, you can already jump off your horse with X and then come down with square to do a regular attack. So this is essentially just a more cinematic version of that. You know, if you really want it for the cinematic reason, go for it. But once again, it's not something that I would consider to be necessary. As for the deflection tree, if you're a fan of parries, this whole tree is phenomenal. Just a brief look at it, we get extra health on perfect parries. We get extra resolve on perfect parries. On perfect parries, we can terrify enemies so they can fall down and we have a chance to just walk up and execute them. We gain the ability to parry spear attacks, which typically aren't parryable. And we can gain the ability to parry unblockable sword attacks, which you see that blue glint on the character. Anytime you see that glint, those are attacks that can't be parried unless you have these two abilities. There's also red glints on certain attacks. The shield enemies in particular, they do a shield slam. Those will have a red glint on them. The only way to deal with those is going to be dodging. So which tree you go for is really going to come down to your playstyle. If you're the type of person that really likes parrying, deflection is obviously an excellent tree. Now, as for the mythic abilities, these are a little bit more unique. What's going to happen is as you explore through the game, you're going to encounter NPCs that want to tell you a story that they heard, and they'll mention a storyteller or a lore master, and then they'll guide you toward where he's at. You'll find that guy, listen to his story, and then you'll go on a quest to obtain the mythic art. In the first region, you can get access to Heavenly Strike and Explosive Arrow, but these are essentially just very, very potent abilities that allow you to do a lot of damage. These ones cost resolve to use, so think of them like special abilities. But when you see prompts to get these, definitely go knock those out because they're super valuable. As for exploration, we're going to touch on that a little bit later in the video, but in general, it's just not really worth it, and I'll come back to explain why in a little bit. Hopping over into our stances. Now we have 4 main stances in the game, each with a bonus towards a particular enemy type. We have Stone Stance for swordsmen, water for shieldmen, wind for spearmen, and moon stance for brutes. Now, it's not to say that it's impossible to beat these targets without the right stance. You can certainly take down brutes without moon stance or spearmen without wind stance, but using the right stance for the right job will make things a lot easier, because the heavy attack in each stance is designed to basically take down that target. For example, this comes in with a number of kicks and then a heavy overhead slash, which can help to stagger back brutes. This aims to essentially knock the shield out of enemies' hands. But each stance can also be built upon. And the reason I want to point this out is if you're looking for a good investment, I'd suggest focusing on water stance. And the reason for this is, in general, a lot of the Mongol bosses are going to have shields, making water stance already a good choice. But more importantly than that, the special ability here of Flurry, building all the way up to Surging Strikes, just puts out an insane number of hits into the target. And then the final upgrade for that is going to increase the damage of each attack as the chain continues. So in terms of just raw DPS, this has the potential to do immense damage to the target, and it's going to be very potent. Moving on down into our ghost skills. And as you continue to play the game and build up your legend, each time you hit a new legend tier, you'll be able to pick a ghost weapon to unlock. All of them have their uses, and it's really just going to come down to what you kind of want to play with. Kunai are really nice that they can easily weave into combat. There, if you see an enemy running away or trying to run and kill a hostage or something, Kunai are a great way to just toss out some quick damage. Black powder bombs are large AoE explosions. In general, I'm not a giant fan of these, mainly because enemies can run from them. They're good to start off combat with, but once combat has begun, I find their usefulness decreases. Smoke bomb is more of a disengagement tool. You're going to throw this down literally and then just dip out, run, hide in a bush, whatever the case is. But there's obvious synergy between that and the charm that I touched on earlier, the Okunonushi charm. We have Sticky Bomb, which is my personal favorite. Sticky Bomb throws a bomb onto the target, which will then explode, doing a bunch of damage. The upgrades for this are also pretty potent, but I'll let you discover those on your own. And then lastly, we have Wind Chime, which you can use to throw and distract an enemy, useful for luring an enemy over for an assassination, or maybe just getting an enemy to leave a zone, whatever the case is. Moving down here into Evolving Tactics. Now, as you continue and play the game, you'll be able to pick these up. These are kind of core skills, if you will. But there's 3 upgrades in particular to these 3 trees I want to touch on. The first being Safe Landing. I cannot stress enough how soon you want to get this ability. I want to say this was like the first or second point I ended up picking up. And just to showcase this, right now we're on a pretty good cliff here. Let's go to I'm pretty sure we'll die right from here. This is probably, what, 15 feet? And we died. So that didn't seem very high, you know. For a lot of RPGs, you'd be like, "What just happened?" That was not massive. But having Safe Landing, a jump that would kill you, we now just land and roll. So, needless to say, an incredibly potent ability. I can't stress enough how useful that's going to be to have. There's a lot of times where you're going to jump, even just jumping off of a roof when you're like assaulting Mongols or whatever the case is. Having access to that role will help you out greatly. So definitely one you want to pick up. Moving on from there, Concentration. Now you get the bow early from doing Ishikawa's quest chain. I'll be touching on quest chains a little bit towards the end of the video just to try and keep the spoilers kind of allocated in a specific part of the video. But Concentration can be really useful, you know, just slowing down the bow and being able to pop an enemy in the head. Even if you don't level this up all the way, having 1 point here is still nice. And then lastly, Far Hearing. Now, Far Hearing is more of a utility skill, but what's great about Far Hearing is when you assault a base, it's going to give you more situation awareness. You're going to know where each enemy is. You're going to be able to find out where the leader's at. And it's really helpful because a lot of bases, you can observe a leader first and then kill the leader. And when you're observing the leader, that will count towards your progression for stances. So if you have 2 notches on a stance that you need to unlock a new stance, you could observe the leader and then kill the leader, and that's going to count as both notches. So having access to that hearing will just make it that much easier to find the leaders and observe them first. Now moving on from there, now we're going to finally talk about exploration. Now the exploration points I would consider to be a trap. And the reason I'm saying this is at first glance, they sound really good. You know, I'm going to use Guiding Wind to find hot springs for health, or, oh, bamboo strikes for max resolve, or shrines, and I can get charms. But the reality is, you're going to find this stuff just as you play. Just as you play the game. You know, as long as you're not just going mission, 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 ignoring stuff, you know, just running along this road, and I would uncover the fact that, hey, there's a shrine right there and there's a hot spring right there. Additionally, the game actually has a built-in way of helping you find new stuff. This golden bird that you can see right here, anytime you find one of these, it's going to attempt to lead you to something that you haven't done yet. Now, whether that's going to be a hot spring or a bamboo strike or a side mission or a haiku, you only find out when you get there. But the fact is, when you see a gold bird, it means that there is something you haven't done, and the bird is going to lead you on over to where that happens. So in this case, birds are bringing me on over here. If I keep following it, you can see the bird has brought me to a bamboo strike. Now, when it comes to combat in the game, there are a couple ways to mitigate damage. Obviously, you can just block by holding down the left bumper, and blocking doesn't cost posture or anything, so you don't need to worry about it like Sekiro where you need to time it. You know, you just hold it down and you can block. But there are attacks that you can't block that you have to dodge. So I want to talk about parrying and perfect parrying. Now, a parry is a pretty wide window, to be honest. You just got to block right before the attack would hit, so like that. Right there, that's a perfect parry, but a regular parry will open the enemy up to an attack. Additionally, getting a dodge is going to open you up to a free attack as well, even without that dodge skill. So that was a perfect dodge, but doing a regular dodge, you can see, even with just a regular dodge, you can still get in a couple attacks pretty easily, which is kind of why I said you're not going to really need to have access to that move. Perfect dodges are just much tighter timing. Same with perfect parries. I actually end up getting hit a lot trying to get perfect parries off. But they sure are badass when they happen. The last thing I want to touch on is obviously the jumping attack. You can do that from the horse as well. So if you're riding on up a group, you know, just leap off your horse, come down with the katana, and you can kill people like that. If you run up on enemies that aren't aware of you, you can actually get a free assassinate doing that as well. And you can jump and do a heavy attack to do a kick, which early on, this is going to be really good to help break shields. Once you get water stance, you can obviously just use that instead, and that'll do plenty of damage. Lots of damage. The last thing is knowing what attacks to parry versus what attacks to dodge. There is a red glint, like you'll see right here, and anytime you see that red glint, that's an attack that you absolutely have to dodge. I looked around for quite a while to find an enemy to showcase this with, and this one looks a little bit funky, so excuse the footage. But those attacks, you just have to dodge them outright. You can't actually block those or anything like that, so just keep that in mind. So before we wrap things up, I wanted to talk about the main story missions and the order I'd suggest doing them based on rewards. So if you want to avoid all spoilers, now would be the time to tune on out. But hopping over into Jin's journey, over in the journal here, we have a couple of key missions here. The first couple you just have to do no matter what, and then you're going to access missions for Ishikawa, missions with Yuna and her brother, and then missions for Ryozo and Lady Masako. Now, the Lady Masako mission, that is going to get you access to the Samurai Clan armor. Beyond doing that, you'll be able to gain access to a couple of charms and whatnot. Not a bad mission to knock out, especially if you want to get a hold of that armor. Blood on the Grass, which is Ryuzo's mission. This will get you the Ronin attire, and his chain is more combat oriented, so you get a couple combat charms from there as well. Doing the Ishikawa stuff is going to get you bow related stuff. The first mission will gain access to archery and the half bow, and then additional ones in that series will help get you more bow related stuff. But in particular, what I want to point out is the blacksmith chain, because you'll do the broken blacksmith and then hammer and forge and then the iron hook, and after doing this you'll obtain access to the grappling hook, which is an absolutely incredible tool to have. I've had areas where I'll jump off mountains that are way too high to survive with quick roll and just throw out a grappling hook to grab a hold at the last minute and land. You can use this to leap across rooftops. It's not quite as OP as, say, the Sekiro grappling hook. You're not just going all over the place constantly, but it is helpful in exploring the world and navigating. So definitely something that you're going to want to get your hands on sooner rather than later. So with all that being said, we're going to wrap things on up. Honestly, Ghost is a phenomenal game. I'm sure that once everyone gets their hands on it, that y'all are going to enjoy this game a lot. I have found myself just sinking countless hours into it and been enjoying every second. So either way, thanks for coming on by and watching. Hope y'all enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you next time in Tsushima.